It's the San Antonio Brahmas Roundup with interim head coach Payton Pardee on 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star.
Tough overtime loss to the Memphis Showboats last week. Let's talk about it here on the Blitz on 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star. Joe Reinagel took the rest of the day off. I'm Jason Minix, and joined now on the Buyers Barricades guest line is interim head coach Payton Pardee. Coach, at what point did you feel like you had that one, and now are you just snake bit when it comes to getting that win?
You know, that was a tough one. I'm not going to lie. You know, I thought, you know, that was probably one of the crazier games that I'd been a part of as far as, you know, the ebbs and the flows and, you know, even some of the mistakes that we made, you know, via turnovers. We were still in that thing at the very end and, you know, had a touchdown call back to win the game, you know, had another touchdown opportunity, you know, a few plays prior. And, you know, obviously that was a really difficult outcome, but, you know, through it all, you know, the thing that just continues to be encouraging to me and to this football team is I think we're all very much on the same page that if we can eliminate some of those turnovers, we have the opportunities. We just have to capitalize when we get those opportunities.
Well, and you say, I mean, 3 interceptions is obviously hard to overcome for any sport. The fact that you had a chance with those turnovers says a lot about your group. Then the missed field goal. I mean, it's just like, do you just sit and watch the tape and say this play, and things would be so differently?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I know I've said in weeks past, and you know, it might sound like, well, yeah, that's obvious, but I mean, the football truly comes down to about 5 or 6 plays a game, and I think, you know, obviously, kind of like you mentioned, you know, just the ones that you literally mentioned with the field goal and the, you know, the touchdown call back and the interceptions. I mean, shoot, right there, you're already at 5 plays, and so, you know, like I said, that was probably one of the craziest games I've been a part of. But, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how grateful I am for the fan base. I mean, they show up each and every week, and they were loud and rowdy. And it was great to be back home for that game. And, you know, obviously we're disappointed from the loss, but we're really anxious and looking forward to 2 more opportunities, you know, to come out with 2, you know, hopefully conference wins.
Payton Pardee joining us here on the Blitz on 94.1 at San Antonio Sports Star. You know, every week you've got to mention no quitting these guys, and that doesn't surprise me. Every time they go out, they're putting on tape. They're either trying to get to the NFL or keep their job in the UFL. Is that the mindset when you look at a team like no hope at the playoffs, but the idea that you've got 2 more opportunities to get paid to go play football?
You know, it's honestly ironic, you know, that you bring that up. You know, 2 things that I'll say kind of, you know, about the situation circumstance we're in is, one, you know, I've seen a lot of football teams when they're in positions similar to ours, you know, where you're eliminated from playoff contention. No.
Did we lose his audio, Pledge? Hang on, Coach. I see you talking, but we lost your audio there for a minute. It's live radio, and sometimes it's happened. Technology is always wonderful until it doesn't work properly.
You guys got me now?
I got you now.
Awesome. Okay. Sorry, I was saying, you know, I'm so proud of our team. I've seen teams before in similar positions to us, you know, throwing the towel and then, you know, the performance, you know, decreases. But one of the things I'm most proud of our guys, you know, for is their continued effort and their continued drive and passion for the game. You know, obviously this has been a difficult year, but you know, what it's really shown me about is, you mentioned, you know, obviously we have 2 more opportunities. We're all, you know, this is our career, everybody, myself, the players, you know, the other coaches on staff, but additionally, you know, I've been able to use this season, as challenging as it has been, to, you know, kind of reemphasize some points to our players about, you know, football in a lot of ways is about life. And a lot of times in life, you know, we can all have plans and we want it to go a certain way. But when things don't go the way you want them to, or they don't go, quote unquote, according to plan, how you respond in those situations, especially as a man, that is really, really important. And honestly, that's everything at the end of the day. And so, you know, I've been able to use this year, you know, and past couple of weeks to kind of talk to our guys about that. And, you know, it comes down to, obviously we're all professionals and, you know, we have a standard to uphold. And that being, we're going to play our hearts out and play with everything we have. But additionally, aside from the career aspect and element, to me, it's about setting a good precedent for how life's going to go for all of us. You know what I mean? Because football is a game that really emphasizes and highlights, things that just happen in life. And with that, it's how do you respond when adversity hits? Or, are you going to have a positive attitude? Or are you going to, the alternative that would be throwing the towel? And that's where I'm so proud of our football team is, I've seen so much growth and maturity from this bunch, not only from, continued to perform better each and every week, but as well as, their attitude and mindset, after each game and then going into this week, obviously.
So I take it it's been solid this week in practice. Nobody's hanging their head and, just going through the motions, because you're right. I mean, I've seen it. I do a lot of high school football here, broadcasts, and you get towards the end of the year and a team that is out of any playoff contention, and you could tell they're going through the motion. You're not seeing that at your practices?
No, sir, not at all. And that's been one of the neat things. And, I'm naturally a positive, optimistic guy, but I'm very, very happy with where we are right now this week, going into our game on Friday against the Battlehawks. And, we had an excellent week of practice similar to last week. And so I'm really excited, I'm excited to see our guys get another opportunity. I'm excited to see how we're able to respond this week after a difficult, tough loss last week. And, I'm ready to spot the ball. I think our guys are ready to go.
Now, as you get ready for the game Friday night, another Friday night game. I'm not sure if you're a fan of Friday games or not, but at least you get your weekend off. But you're getting ready for this when there's two left. Out of curiosity, and one of the comments on our Facebook or our YouTube page is asking, do you play young guys that haven't played a lot to get them out there, or do you go with the starters that you've been going with, or is there a mix of both?
I'll be honest, that's a phenomenal question. And I think for us, we're in my opinion, we're in a really unique position because of where we've been over the past really 3 to 4 weeks, like general roster wise and injury wise. We've had to shake up a lot of things and play, guys at different positions, guys that maybe haven't played as much, they have been playing. And so for us, this week, our mentality is, you'll see some new faces here and there at different spots, but we're, anybody that's going to be active for us and, so to speak, suiting up, if you will, we expect for them to have an opportunity and for them to compete. And really for us, our big focus and emphasis is winning these next 2 games. Regardless of where we are with the playoff picture, anything like that, it's really important to myself and to this football team that we finish this season out, strong and the right way. And so that's our top priority right now at this moment. But with that, injuries in this league kind of, it provides, in our case, we've had quite a few over the past couple of weeks. It's kind of, I don't want to say forced our hand, but we've had to get creative with how we're, where we're playing guys and things of that nature. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing the guys that we have available this game and what they're able to do.
Is it a balance? Because obviously winning is priority one, but does it become a priority to get a guy more playing time than maybe he has been just because he's been practicing, he's been working hard?
I think to me, very much case by case. I think there's absolutely a lot of merit to that. And that's where, with us this week, you'll see, I'm a big believer in the work that you put in practice, kind of, I don't want to say dictates, but kind of sets the track for what your game is going to be, so to speak. And so with that, absolutely. I think guys that are deserving of an opportunity absolutely should and will get one. And we're really excited to see, I really believe in our players. For me, it's, I'm excited, not only as the head coach of this football team or interim head coach, but as well as the offensive coordinator. I'm excited to see, what we're able to do with our talent. And kind of like I've said, in weeks past, I'm excited to, try to highlight, different guys and their skill sets and put them in positions where they can be successful.
Now, the game Friday night against the Battlehawks on Fox, I believe, the quarterback position is struggled all year for you guys. I know you started with Kellen, you went to Kevin Hogan, 14 of 25, 90 yards, 3 interceptions last week. There's a third quarterback that's part of the team, or do you go back to Kellen, or who's going to be QB1 on Friday night?
So this week, Kellen Mond's going to be our starting quarterback. Kevin Hogan has he sustained a hand injury towards the end of the game, so he's going to be unavailable for us this week. And so the three QBs that we'll have available are going to be Kevin Hogan, Kellen Mond, JG, Jarrett Guarantano, and then we'll have Alan Bowman as well. And so those will be our three quarterbacks this game, obviously with Kellen getting the start this week.
For Kellen to start the season as the starter, and kind of since he signed was quote unquote the face of the franchise, to get benched, to come back, that tells me that every meeting and every practice he was the same dude.
100%. And that's honestly, I'm really excited to see Kellen play this week, and I think he's going to have a really good game. And you kind of hit the nail on the head. Obviously, whenever you're at the quarterback position, there's only one on the field, and so whenever you make a decision to go in a different direction, like anything, Kellen, the way he's approached it, and his attitude and attention to detail in meetings has been truly phenomenal. He's been positive and optimistic, encouraging to the other quarterbacks, while still preparing, as if he were the starter, which is really what you want from all of your quarterbacks. And to be honest with you, from every player on the team, is each individual player needs to prepare as if they're going to get a big opportunity, because you never know when your number is going to be called. And to that end, Kellen has done a great job of his, individual preparation, since the last game that he started in. And I'm really excited to see what he's able to do this week against the Battlehawks.
Payton Pardee, head coach of the San Antonio Brahmas, here on the Blitz on 94.1 at San Antonio Sports Star. The other, another local area player, surprised to see Kavion Patton was released yesterday. Can you share some details on that decision?
Yes. What I'll be able to say, unfortunately, I won't be able to tell you as much as I wish I could, but, CP, we had to make a difficult decision as a coaching staff, and, he has some personal issues and things that he needs to, have some time to address. And so, unfortunately, that's where I'm going to, have to leave that as far as that situation. But I do want to say, how much love and respect that I have for Savion Patton, and for everything that he's done for this football team. I really can't say enough about him, as a player, as a man, and as a person. He has been an absolute joy to coach, and we wish him nothing but the best, in the future.
Peyton, I was out last week. My daughter graduated from Arizona State, so I was out in Phoenix last week when you were on. So I didn't get a chance to ask you this, but I'm curious about the coaching clinic that you went to, hosted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Can you tell me a little bit about that program and what that experience was like?
Absolutely. It was an incredible experience. Earlier in the year, it kind of truly came out of the blue. And it was an opportunity that, I feel very, very grateful for. And obviously I made a commitment to do that and under different circumstances. And so, for me, kind of what entailed, with that opportunity is a lot of advanced planning, making sure that, practice and everything, to that nature was, set and prepared before, my departure. And then, the offensive coaching staff, led by Marvin Williams, Jack Welch, Cody Latimer, Jesse Thompson, they did a phenomenal job, in my stead. And then, for me, it was a great opportunity. I had such a blast being down in Tampa Bay. And then in the evenings was having Zoom meetings with the quarterbacks and with the coaching staff. And so I was kind of, taking two different hats on and off, but it was definitely a unique experience, and one that I feel very, very blessed and grateful for, and had a really good time out in Tampa.
Well, and like a lot of these players in the UFL, if they get elevated to the NFL, that's the goal. I imagine that's the same for you as a coach, and that looked like an incredible opportunity. You're on the radar, is what they say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, I'm a big believer in, I always tell people, any job I've ever tried to get and go after, I've never gotten. And the jobs that, I'm just, whenever I'm focused on where I am and trusting that God has a plan and that he's going to put me where he wants me to be able to help, lead and develop, men, is truly kind of my outlook. And so that was a neat experience, because it was kind of one of the same opportunities that I mentioned prior, as far as, wasn't didn't know it was going to happen or pan out, but definitely, very grateful that I was able to go out there and experience that. It was a really neat experience.
Payton Pardee, interim head coach, or let's call you head coach of the San Antonio Brahmas, here on the Blitz. Now, Coach, I'm always afraid to do something like this because I have no idea why Pledge is going to play this song.
When I get home.
Sing to me.
Now I'm on the lake shore and I'm sitting in the sun. That is too funny.
All right, so Pledge just tells me in my ear, I'm going to play a song for Coach real quick. I had no idea. What's the background there?
So I'll give you the context as I'm hopping on the call to get set up for this segment. I was kind of like mumbling to myself, and I was like, you know what? Have you ever heard "I'm Gonna Miss Her" by Brad Paisley? And he was like, oh yeah, it's a great song. I was like, I don't know why, but it's stuck in my head right now. And so we had a funny conversation about that.
That's been in your head all day?
To be honest with you, I'm walking by our director of football operations, and he was singing a song that was very, very close lyrically to that song. And so I don't know if I'm missing my fiance or what the situation is, but no, I was listening to him, and I was like, you know what? That song, I'm Gonna Miss Her, just popped in my head, and it's a good song.
Is she in Dallas or back home?
So she actually she's out in Brownwood, Texas right now.
All right. Yeah, you're going to have to send her this clip, baby. I'm thinking about you.
No doubt. No doubt.
Need to see you. I get it. And you get your weekend off, right? Friday night game, so weekend off?
Absolutely, yeah. And for us, this is kind of circling back to a comment you made earlier. I personally, I really enjoy the Friday games, and to be honest with you, I enjoy all the games, but the Friday games are unique because the schedule's accelerated, so to speak. Obviously, we have the same amount of time to prepare, but I think it's a really nice wrinkle. I myself was a part of the Legacy XFL in 23. When we were able to play, I think 1 or 2 Thursday night games. I think it adds a really nice change of pace. And then obviously this week, we will get some time on the weekend because we're going into a long week, so to speak, kind of like a mini bye week with our next game being the following Sunday. So yeah, this will be one of the very few first weekend I've had free in a few, I guess more than a few weeks.
Well, get a nice cold beverage, some country music, and I think you'll have a good weekend after you get a win in St. Louis and get ready for the season finale next Sunday at the Alamodome with an 11 a.m. start.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great plan to me.
Sing us to break, Coach.
Sitting in the sun. Oh, it's just got such a catchy ring to it.
Mm-hmm. Coach, always appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
No doubt. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate y'all.